Good morning. This type of pastry is eaten, whatever. I was going to do a Jeopardy joke, but I'm not. I'm just going to say welcome to the morning meeting. Thank you for joining. This program is a little bit different. We believe in the presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding. And so whether you're watching on YouTube, hello, or here on the two-way platform, hiya, don't write smack in the chat. It happens every day. People mock me for trying to deter it, but I'll continue because it's important to say this is a different kind of conversation. We talk about whatever very openly. We hope to have conversations that are long, sophisticated, and in the political realm, everybody's welcome. So please, if you're here on the two-way platform and you want to be part of the conversation today, raise your hand. As I always say, we like the returning folks, but we like new people. First time, long time, please raise your hand, get in the conversation. Sean, Dan, and I will kick things around, and then we'll take your questions. So this morning, fellas, as you may or may not know, I'm broadcasting live from New York's Avenue of the Americas, aka 6th Avenue, from the international headquarters of SiriusXM, a company formed by the tie-up of two longtime non-terrestrial radio outfits, Sirius and XM. And they gave me a very nice room. I'm going to be on Michael Smerconish's show in an hour. So if you want more of me, that's where to look. If you have SiriusXM, which you should. And the room they gave me to do this program from, I looked in the room next door, a little conference room, and guys, look what I found. Please
Look
show
who it's named
105.
for. No, it's named
105.
for.
Yeah, look for 105. And I'm in room 106. Oh, no, I don't know. I'm in room 106, but show graphic 105. Up on the wall, I just run into this giant poster. Sean, it's dated July 23rd, 2018. Tell us about that historic day in American history.
That's when I did I think it was with David Webb and some other folks. My first book, The Briefing, came out, prominently displayed on Dan's bookshelf. And I did it, and it was funny because probably um 4 or 5 months ago, I'm in New York City doing a thing, and someone says, "Did you see your conference room?" And Mark, since you're next to it, you can attest to this. This is not exactly a conference room.
It's a largish phone booth, is what it is in
Yeah,
terms of
it's
size.
yeah. And they said, I was like, really? Wow, that's so cool. And it was like, they're like, yeah, we've got your poster in there. And so it's the Patriot conference room, quote unquote.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
hey, listen, I'll
Well,
take it.
yeah. If they'd put me in there, I would have freaked out. It would have been too cosmic. Anyway, Dan, you ever been in the Sirius XM building?
I have not, no, but I listen to SiriusXM those.
Yeah.
Can I
So it
tell you one of the
sits.
coolest things about going
Yeah,
to SiriusXM? If you
yeah,
have an official meeting, when you walk in, they've got this screen, like
yep,
massive, right? And you walk in and it says, "Welcome, Mr. Mark Halperin,
yes,
welcome." And the cool thing isn't to see your name, but who it's associated with. Like I was like hoping that it's like, "Welcome, Mr. Sean Spicer," and you
yes,
name the
yes.
band. But unfortunately
Yeah,
for me, it was like, and Joe Jones.
right. So the
No
the
offense to
Sirius
Joe.
the Sirius XM building sits on what we affectionately call Media Row here on 6th Avenue, next door to Fox, across the street from NBC, down from where the Time Life building used to be, where I used to work. It's no longer the Time building. I don't even notice Time Magazine have offices in New York. I don't know, but they're not there. In any event, this is a great building, and I'm very grateful to them for hosting me. Today, Joe Biden, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, delivers remarks with Dr. Joe Biden at something called the White House Conference on Women's Health Research. Many of you were overwhelmed with the amount of coverage of Joe Biden's economic speech yesterday. Not because there was barely any. We'll talk about that in a moment. But this is the second day in a row in which the president's trying to talk in a kind of a comprehensive 80,000 foot way about a signature issue. Yesterday, the economy, today, reproductive freedom. We'll see what happens there. The vice president, little twist, I'll give it away right now. The first part of her schedule says this: the vice president will be in Washington, D.C., where she will receive briefings and conduct internal meetings with staff. Those meetings will be A, open press, B, closed press, C, other. Sean, not listening. B.
I'm going to
Yeah.
guess closed.
Yeah. Dan?
Yeah.
Closed.
Closed. They're closed. But then there's another line on her schedule. It says at 3:30 p.m., the president and the vice president will receive the president's daily brief. This briefing will be closed press. So, Sean, what does it mean when the vice president's included in the public? I mean, I think she goes at least sometimes to the president's intelligence briefing, or maybe most days she has her own. But why is she listed there as going to the daily brief? Is it for symbolic purposes because of Syria? What would you speculate about that?
The funny thing is, considering that how it's listed on everyone's schedule. I just don't think it's coordinated. I mean, I think she maybe regularly attends and somebody forgot to.
No, but it's not normally on the schedule. I mean, I've seen it there before. It's not like it's never on the schedule, but it's usually on the schedule when like something's going on and they want to show that the vice president, like particularly during the campaign in the 107-day campaign.
Right, and they were trying to make it clear that she was involved.
She's a part, but now that they're lame ducks, I just find it odd. If anybody on
I do,
here knows,
and that's why I'm saying I wonder if this wasn't like intentional. If it was she swinging by, a great will add her to the schedule.
I think it's intentional. I just want to know what the purpose is. None of us know. All right,
Well,
for the upteenth day in a row, and what is true for most of the days during the transition, there's no public schedule listed for the president-elect or the vice president-elect. Lots, however, going on Capitol Hill, where Secretary of State Antony Blinken, not Anthony, Antony Blinken, is testifying about the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan before the House Foreign Affairs Committee. This is the culmination of a long back and forth in which House Republicans have tried very hard to get the Secretary of State to testify, and so today it happens in less than an hour. The Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, holds his weekly news conference at 11. And then, if you like courtesy calls, as much as I like good and plenty, there are a lot of them today, and you should be excited. Just some of the courtesy calls on tap. Pete Hegseth meeting Susan Collins, Bill Cassidy, Mike Crapo, Josh Hawley, Todd Young, and Tim Sheehy. I continue to say, watch Todd Young, the senator from Indiana. I am not sure he will be a yes vote on Pete Hegseth. That's my spidey sense, not reporting. Scott Bessent, nominated to be Treasury Secretary. Tom Tillis, Steve Daines, Ron Johnson, Marsha Blackburn, Bill Cassidy. Howard Lutnick, Treasury Secretary nominee, meeting with his fellow New Yorker, Chuck Charles Schumer. And then Tulsi Gabbard.
That might be the first Dem courtessy call.
There have been some, but it's the first I know. It's the first that's kind of been out there, but I think there have been some. But yes, very key. But they've got common cause on a number of issues, including China, which we'll also talk about in this show. This is a day book filled with teases. Then Tulsi Gabbard is meeting with Jim Risch and then Marco Rubio, who in theory will not be a senator. And seeing that on her schedule made me think this. In theory, he is in line, if they're both confirmed to be her administration colleague. He's the outgoing #1 Republican ranking member on intelligence. Sean, wouldn't it be important and key for Republicans who worry about her bona fides and her credibility and reliability on intelligence if Rubio endorsed her, which presumably he will?
Yeah, I mean, it's a smart PR move. By the way, not to mention, total side note, but there's obviously a big fight over the next chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate between Tom Cotton and John Cornyn. So, but I think that's the Rubio thing is clearly helping her get some bona fides on the Hill.
Yeah. All right, let's run through a bunch of stuff real quick. I don't know that any of these topics require a super extended conversation. And then we'll want to get to your questions on whatever you'd like to talk about. If you didn't watch Two-Way Tonight last night and you missed our conversation with Mark Caputo and Matt Gorman, shame on you. I pity the fools. It was incredible. You can still watch it on YouTube, but we talked quite a bit about where things stand, particularly with Hegseth, with Ron DeSantis. And I heard from a number of people, a number meaning two, who are knowledgeable people who waved off the notion that Laura Trump would be the Senate nominee, replacing Marco Rubio, waved off the notion that Ron DeSantis would be defense secretary. So, Dan, where do you stand on those 2 points today? Do you think DeSantis, if it's not Pete Hegseth, do you think it'll be DeSantis? And do you think Laura Trump will become the senator?
I mean, based on after watching Two-Way Tonight last night, I am low odds on DeSantis getting it. I mean, it just sounds like the animosity between so many members of Trump's orbit and DeSantis. I just can't see them bridging that and giving.
Right, and what about Laura? What about Laura Trump?
Yeah, I sure sounds like she wants it, and it sure sounds like the Trump people were angling to get it to her. So I think it's hers. Yeah.
Sean, I think that the Trump people were playing a game to try to box DeSantis in, and he will not be boxed in, and it will not be her, based on what I heard last night. After
here's what I would say.
Where are you on those 2 points?
I am in the DeSantis. I mean, as far as I can tell, I mean, this is tangential to the conversation of where does Pete stand in the nomination process. I think continue to believe he is at an 8. And probably after today, every day that he gets by, it notches up a 1/10 of a point.
Yeah.
as I've said, this weekend's going to be important because he'll be around a lot of people. And this is if Trump starts hearing he's great, that'll help him buy some more time. And that boxes out DeSantis. But here's where I stand by my original point from a few weeks ago. I believe this is going to a Trump. They've actually boxed him in on Laura Trump too. She stepped down from the RNC co-chair position. She has openly said that she would accept it or said, I would definitely, be interested in it. And Trump has had a conversation with DeSantis. That being said, if DeSantis were to go back on his word or go back on this, it's not his word. I apologize. That's not true. If they were to have gotten this far and then she didn't get it, I just think there'd be hell to pay because they've allowed the expectation game to manifest itself into one in which people believe it's going to happen. And unless she came out personally and said, I don't want this, then it's going to be a major disappointment. And DeSantis, I think that would be, so I don't think he takes it. I think she does.
I agree with you on the supply side that the Trump people, either by design or just exuberance, have made it seem like she's getting it. But again, I had two communications, unsolicited communications, that lead me to believe that DeSantis is not going to pick her. And as we talked about on the show last night, he doesn't really have to pick until after he sees if he's getting defense secretary, till he sees how things shake out. So let's see. I'm not as bullish on her chances as I was yesterday. Yeah.
But even listening to them last night, I mean, the one part of that, like, whole, he goes and then the lieutenant governor appoints, and then is like, to Sean's point, is DeSantis really going to start his 2028 campaign pissing off Donald Trump and MAGA? Like, is that how he's going to start the new year? I mean, he doesn't seem to be a profile in courage going up against that crowd. So he's going to start now. I mean, I guess maybe that's his lane he tries to carve out. Is just like, I'm not J.D. Vance and I'm not in bed with these people.
But he's got a thing of value, and I don't think he's inclined to give it to the Trump people. We'll see. All right, guys, just in general.
Well, can I tell you this? Who he picks, however, if he didn't pick her, which again, whatever. If he doesn't, does he go caretaker route or somebody who could win a primary? Because if he chooses James Ademeyer as chief of staff or something, I mean, that's going to inflame people even more.
Yeah, I think he'll choose the what is she, Secretary of State or Attorney General? I'm blanking. Attorney General.
Ashley Moody?
Yeah, I think he'll pick Ashley Moody.
Well, so if Ashley Moody gets picked, she would, I assume, run.
Yeah.
Which would, help, but also, I mean, I think you would create some problems here.
You mean with MAGA and the Trump people who want the seat?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. Yeah. All right, but let's stipulate. We're not talking about with new revelations or disastrous performance at their hearings. Are any Trump nominees currently imperiled in your view, or are you from the Tom Cotton school that says they're all being confirmed? Dan.
I'm still watching Mitch McConnell. He's been quiet. I just imagine he wants to stick it to Trump on somebody.
Sean.
They all get through.
Yeah, I'm now in the Cotton school, barring revelations. Although I will tell you, there's at least two nominees about whom I would tell you to watch your Daily Beast, etc. news alerts. I think we're going to see a couple more drops here on a couple people. All right, primaries. There's lots of talk in MAGA world about running primaries against anyone who crosses the president on nominations or maybe on anything else. And amongst those who like to threaten, the Roger Stones and Steve Bannons of the world, is also Charlie Kirk. 101, please. So Charlie Kirk tweeted Senator Rounds, who didn't like what Senator Rounds said about, I think about the FBI director, maybe. You're up for re-election in 2026. If you're against any of Trump's nominees, a primary challenge wouldn't be hard. Just a reminder. So, Sean, obviously, you can name any state with a squishy, I'll say, Republican who's up in 2026 and say, sure, here's someone who might run. But in the Trump political operation, is that something they're fine letting Charlie Kirk and others bandy about, or is this something the Trump political operation might actually do? Oppose an incumbent senator of their own party?
Oh, I think that if he were to, I think, yes, they would. And what I think is fascinating about what's going on now, and I thought about this after I saw the Charlie Kirk tweet, is if you look, we've talked about how unconventional some of the tactics have been, with Pete in particular. the idea that like think about what the Heritage Foundation is doing with the ads, what Charlie Kirk and Turning Point are doing, keeping Republicans in line. You've basically, we gave a lot of credit in the last couple of days to quote Pete's team. I think a lot of the credit has to go to the outside groups though. I mean Charlie and I mean they're
coordinated by Pete's team though.
Well, some degree.
They're not turtles on fence posts.
No, but I don't think Charlie Kirk is looking for people to give him permission to do anything.
True.
And I think part of this comes down to, I mean, maybe, and even Heritage, I don't think they're asking for permission. They assume it's the right thing to do and they're doing it. I would not give too much credit to Pete's team on this. I think Pete's doing a good job, but I think the outside groups are not asking. If Charlie Kirk doesn't ask for permission. And I do think.
Or forgiveness.
Correct. But he also, look, that was not done in a vacuum. In other words, Charlie understands what he's doing. And when you push something like that out publicly, you're making it very clear. I think that threat matters in Iowa. I think it matters in South Dakota. There are places where it matters more than others. But I will tell you this, if you are Mike Rounds and you vote against somebody, you will get a primary challenge. And there's a big difference between say, and I'm trying to think of a good example, but some very influential person and a Charlie Kirk. And the reason is Charlie's got an entire army mobilized behind him that will say, fine, I'll go knock on doors. I'll go do this. And he's got a lot of money to do it. So he's got the actual apparatus to back up.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you both this question. To search your historical memory data banks, has an incumbent White House ever publicly supported a nomination challenge to one of its incumbent senators? No, but you're saying Trump will do something that's never been done. I know he's done that.
No, I think Trump will do another thing that's he'll do another thing that's never been done.
I get it. But I don't know. I mean, if you're John Thune, laconic, Western, some say
but can
weak.
I just to be
like
clear,
you say the White House, you're destabilizing the conference by having my members be worried about primary challenges.
All right, time out. This is like exactly what Trump did with tariffs. You throw the thing out, Trudeau gets on a plane and runs down to Mar-a-Lago. Joni, last week, everybody was worried about Joni.
I didn't ask you if he
hightails it back.
I didn't ask you if he'd threaten it. I asked you if he'd do it.
And I think the point is that we won't have to worry about it until he does it. But that was the reason that he sent the tweet, was to make it very clear. We will do it. I have the resources to do it. You will feel it. And hopefully you won't be dumb enough not to.
So the other day when I said naively, and I was criticized by you all and others for being naive, that Tom Tillis could survive a primary challenge, and he didn't care if he lost, and that was part of helping me. I heard from very knowledgeable people in Republican politics calling me crazy naive. And they said, Tillis might not even be able to survive a primary challenge if Trump doesn't endorse against him. But if Trump endorses against him, he's dead. And I continue to say, if you're John Thune, are you really just sitting by passively while the White House tries to beat your members of your conference?
What does John Thune have? First of all, this has nothing to do with Senator Thune. What juice does he have? John Thune.
Well, forget juice, but forget juice. Just like they need to be in business with John Thune. Senate leader.
The thing is, you're not talking so far. I haven't seen anything. Like if they were to go after Susan Collins, there is a chance you lose. There's a chance you lose that seat, right?
Correct.
If you, it's like moving Joe Manchin out of West Virginia. Forget it. The seat's gone. So I think you can play this game of chicken in South Dakota or Iowa, where you have a very strong likelihood of retaining the seat no matter what.
Of course.
And I think they will look to make an example out of somebody. I actually think they will, if somebody gets too close to the line, outright. There'll be stories that Don Jr. and Charlie Kirk are having meetings in a hotel to recruit a candidate. They will start, there'll be a rally, there'll be some local radio interviews, and they will basically get right up to the line and say, if you say one more word, it's go time, and we're taking you out, and your scalp is on our mantle now.
All I'm saying is no majority leader or minority leader, or no leader of either party whose party controls the White House can sit back and not take a ton of heat if they're not trying to convince the White House, stop primarying members of the conference.
But Mark,
Well, but I think what they're going to say is stop holding up our nominees.
Right.
Right, John, you need to get them on board. And I think the problem for Thune is Thune's base is the moderate K Street wing of the party. Thune's base is not the MAGA side of the party, which is so he's jammed. And I think that they will turn it on Thune. Thune has nobody. I mean, I don't know in the conference if there are people who will say he'll be gone in 2 years. Let him swim around and try to do that. Like, I don't know how much love there is for John Thune.
Listen, thank you to the Democrat for explaining this, because that's spot on. I mean, that literally was. I mean, if the phone call goes like this, ring, ring. Hey, John, it's Donald Trump. What's going on there? Well, Mr. President, I really wish you would stop threatening my members. Hey, John, get your house in order. Call me back or you're gone. Bye. That's the call.
All right, that's very collegial. All right, let me ask you a policy question, because if you sat down without politics, I think there'd be great agreement amongst a lot of Democrats and Republicans and the incoming administration about how to handle China and how to deal with big tech regulation, particularly, say, related to kids and privacy. So, Sean, what are the differences between the two parties on those issues? Or are they, in fact, quite similar?
So I know that there was the new kids bill in the Senate definitely has some, to be honest with you, some of this is just nuanced, and I don't know that it's partisan as much as it is nuanced. I can't say that this is my exact wheelhouse, but I have kept an eye on the new revised Senate bill. Seems to do a lot more to get agreement on some things. I mean, look, this comes into privacy. It comes into some tech issues. You got some Silicon Valley members out in California that are doing the bidding of the industry. I mean, so that I don't know that it's a completely partisan issue. I probably am not the best person to answer that question. I would just say that some of this just comes down to territorial things more than anything else.
Dan?
Yeah,
how about on China? What's the difference? If you were explaining to a civics class, what is the difference in the outlook of how to deal with China between the two parties now, or is there not?
Well, I think there is complete alignment that China is a threat militarily and China is a threat economically. I think that the difference is, for Democrats, the issue would be that all the labor that has shifted over there, but on some level, the Democrats now defend the white service collar jobs more than Republicans do. And I think Democrats are a little more squishy about going full frontal assault economically at China. I think Trump is much more comfortable talking about it. How much he's going to be willing to do, I think we're going to see, because Wall Street and everyone else has got concerns. But I think there is great agreement on China. I think had TPP not been blown up, the whole Trans-Pacific Partnership, because that was something both parties saw as a way to kind of try to, encircle China in the region, economically and militarily. So I think we're going to have to see. And I think on tech, actually, like I think both parties are really concerned about the concentration of power with the big tech companies. I think there is some resistance still within the Republican Party to the federal government stepping involved, in to try to force, or literally by law, force change, whereas Democrats are much more comfortable doing this. And I think there's just few resistance.
On the tech thing, there is a fundamental difference philosophically. Republicans are much more laissez-faire free speech. Yep. And Democrats, their idea of free speech is by saying, yeah, but you shouldn't be able to talk about the following subjects, and the one thing that I will just get on a soapbox for a second and say, there should be bipartisan, like strong bipartisan support on the threat that China poses. Our Navy is under 300 ships. Our debt is $36 trillion, and politicians from both parties pay lip service to this. China, the CNO, the Chief of Naval Operations, has a countdown clock in her office going to 2027. They are coming for us, and we sit around talking about climate change with China as if they care. This is, to me, the existential threat, both militarily and economically, is right in front of our faces, and politicians from both sides think that we're going to sit down and have tea with these guys.
These two issues, regulating tech and confronting China, the problems are more bicameral and regional, the divisions, than they are partisan. And I think Trump would be smart to assign his best people to try to craft bills that could win broad bipartisan support on both topics. That's my view.
I agree.
That's my editorial. All right, let's talk about one other thing related to Trump and then President Biden. 102. So yesterday, Kimberly Guilfoyle was named the nominee to be ambassador to Greece. The New York Times headline says she was appointed. She actually wasn't. I think they announced the intention to nominate her, but that's longer. All right, then look at the subhead. The announcement came as Donald Trump Jr. has been seen with the socialite Bettina Anderson in Florida. And again, the headline, amid rumors of a breakup. This story is filled with links to the Daily Mail and all sorts of gossipy references to Don Jr.'s personal life. Sean, what up with the New York Times acting like the New York Post?
I actually was going to go there. I was going to say it should be the New York Post and probably the New York Daily News more than the New York Post. I mean, look, it doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise you that they're writing a gossipy story about Don Jr.'s, who he's dating?
But can I just, here's the look, and I went back and forth on this. The first outrage is my sort of instinctive, like Irish angry leprechaun, where I'm like, this is outrageous. And then I say to myself, okay, but a reasonable person would say, if you had brought this up a month ago and there were no rumors of that subtext, would she have been appointed? I mean, look, if they were all happy and she got appointed to ambassador to Greece, the subheading would be, is Don moving with her? I mean, so I don't know. I'm not a fan of reporting on personal lives like that. But at the same time, if you're engaged to be married and you're going to be an ambassador and you really haven't talked that much about foreign affairs, and then you go but you're engaged, just what consequences does that have for Don? Would he have gone with her? I don't know. And so
I guess I understand what you're saying. I guess the piece of it that seems to me to be different than their normal standards is they're writing about rumors. They're writing about stuff in the Daily Mail. They've not confirmed any of this themselves.
That piece, right. I mean, again, it's based on pictures of people photographed coming out of a restaurant.
In the Daily Mail.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that part, I mean, if you wanted to speculate, she's still engaged to Donald Trump Jr., will he be going with her to Greece? What implications does this have? That might be fine. But I mean, I get your point that that being, anyway, I get your point. It was also
look, it's clickbait. The New York Times is not, above it or beneath it. They know it'll get tongues wagging. They know there's a little bit of an indirect thread, likely, potentially, to the ambassador appointment. So,
yeah. All right. One more topic, and then we're going to get to your questions. So please, hands up, as we say in the bank robbing business. Joe Biden gave his speech yesterday on the economy. As we predicted here, forecast here, didn't get very much coverage. Got articles in a few places. New Associated Press poll out today, 104, please, about Hunter Biden and how Americans feel about Joe Biden's decision to pardon his son. Not very popular. 22% approve. 1/5 of Americans say good idea. Sean, if you were White House Communications Director Ben LaBolt, a very talented guy, and the goal was, which it seems to be, I want to leave office, Ben, says Joe Biden, with people thinking I'm great and I'm doing a great job. And there are more pardons coming, we think, that may not be great. What could you do in 30 days to try to get the historians and the media and the public to be more favorably disposed? What would you have him do? Because what he did yesterday, I don't think helped much.
I would go on eBay and look for a time machine and go back 4 years.
Stop it. I want a serious answer. If you don't have a serious answer.
I don't, at this point, I mean, look, narrative set in. How do you convince people who gaslit you that everything is well, that suddenly everything was effective? I think at some point you get off the field and stop making like that speech yesterday was not helpful, but it just proved, there's some things you can't help. I would say keep your mouth shut. Think of some smart things to do. Biden has tried to cement his legacy as a very progressive guy. Maybe you pardon a bunch of criminals and try to say that you were very progressive in letting out people jailed for drug offenses. Or, I guess my point is go to the extreme of what you really want your legacy to be. I have argued for a while that Biden has tried to cement his legacy as the most progressive president ever through a lot of the appointments and things like that. So double down on it. I mean, like, that's the only thing that I would argue he has a shot at. It being said, you did all of this stuff for the progressive movement, but there's nothing policy-wise that he can do at this point.
Dan.
Yeah, I think, Sean, I agree with Sean a little bit. I think giving a speech at the Brookings Institute in which you go at after Trump, like after we just had an election, like this was decided, and I thought it was just kind of tone deaf and silly to try to do what he did and where he did it. I think to Sean's point, like, look, pick 3 things that you hope will be your legacy and go around, go to, if it's the infrastructure bill, go find a bridge that you rebuilt and stand on it, and
Or how about a family that was helped by some of the things you did?
Right, like pick 3 things that are positive and just try to cement it. I think staying in Washington at think tanks, giving these kind of distant speeches, and look, at the end of the day, unfortunately, like when I watch that, I just like cringe. He looks old, he sounds old, like. You just kind of, it's hard to hear what he has to say. And it's hard as a Democrat. I mean, just watching that yesterday, you just shook your head.
But that's why I think that, like, if I were him, and I'm being serious in this, like, you think about labor, the LGBT community, the Black community, think of 4 or 5 things that cement your legacy. Maybe it's, declaring something, permanent funding for HBCUs, or, I mean, who knows, maybe making,
coming out of COVID, like something, like pick a legacy.
Find things in each one of those buckets that you can throw money at, declare something, appoint somebody, but go down those lists of those 3 things that you will always be able to say, I did this for these constituencies of the far left, and they will always remember that I was their champion. He loves to talk about being the, Union Joe. So go, I mean, there's a big fight with the National Labor Relations Board or something. Go.
I'm going to ask you both for a 1-word answer with no explanation, and then we're going to go to questions. Which one of these 2 people is more honest with themselves about the role they played in allowing Donald Trump to win? Okay? Kamala Harris or Joe Biden? Who is more honest with themselves about it? Sean.
Kamala.
Dan.
Yeah, Kamala.
All right, you're both wrong. Barry, welcome in.
So Biden's more honest with himself?
Well, if you're both wrong, you both said Kamala.
Well, no, it could be neither. Somebody else just pointed that out. I didn't think of option C.
Could be neither. All right, Barry, welcome in. Thank you. We'll come back to that topic someday. Barry, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind, please.
Good morning. I live in Washington State, outside of Seattle.
And I've
been wanting. What's that? I'm sorry.
Thanks for getting up early.
Yeah, early bird. So I've been wanting to ask this for a while, and it's a little bit vulnerable, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. Let's see, I was born in the 60s, went to high school in the 80s, grew up in a Democratic house. That's just what we did. I remember my parents watching John Chancellor and reading Time Magazine, Newsweek magazine, and I don't know much. I majored in marketing. I never took a poli-sci class. I don't know how it all works. And I've been paying attention now for like the last 6 years, but I don't know what my quintessential reading material is. It's kind of like I think about it as my grown-up Schoolhouse Rock. For someone like me that is now paying attention, how do I find my quintessential reading material that is maybe unbiased, that is not just in service?
Are you interested in, great question. Are you interested in like the sport of politics and elections or government policy?
Yeah.
But when you say it all, do you mean government or government or campaigns? Because they're different.
Government.
Government.
How does it work? How is it supposed to work?
Yeah.
How does it really work? I don't want to read some manual and it's that's really how it works.
Yeah.
Are there books you would
I'd start with Dan's Twitter feed, but Dan, what are your recommendations? Great question.
Well, I think she's come to the right place to start the conversation, which is the morning meeting. In all seriousness, I don't necessarily know if there is a single trusted source. I think part of it, what I try to do is read a few things from the right and a few things from the left. And then you try to, usually the answer is somewhere in between. because part of it is the two sides respectively can look at the same set of facts in a very different way. And I'm not passing judgment on that, that's just kind of the way it is. So if it's about government and specific policy issues, there are kind of good, what Punchbowl's pretty good about the mechanics of Congress. Like that's all they focus on is kind of the policy and the politics of Capitol Hill. But like if you want the executive branch and agencies, I can send stuff to you that's pretty, but it is kind of getting into the weeds of stuff that may bore you.
Sean.
Yeah, I'm with Dan on this. I don't think there's one outlet. I mean, I'm like a vociferous reader of like, I take it in even from the left. I just want to hear how they frame things, but how the problem is that you have to literally read, I love consuming all of it because I like hearing the different angles that people come at it, because sometimes when you're in the room, you get a kick out of how other people are perceiving what's actually happening in the room. There are several circumstances throughout my career where I read a story about something that happened and I'm like, there was this one day in the White House when President Trump was going out to the helicopter. I think he was flying down to Florida, and the pool was waiting for him outside by Marine One, and they could see a very animated discussion between. I was in the room. It was Reince Priebus, Steve Bannon. Some of them ended up staying back, and the president took off on the plane. We went to Miami, I think, for a school event. And what they reported on about what was actually going on in the room was not even close to what was actually happening. But there was this idea that because people were getting animated, they could see him through a window. It had to be because of the current situation. And the reason I say that is that when you're outside looking in, sometimes you don't fully appreciate the mechanics of what's really happening. So I love to read everything from like studies to the books, to the publications, to the long form essays. So there's a lot. I mean, you have to sort of be like, that's your thing. Like I've got friends of mine who read everything sports related. They can tell you batting averages and free throw percentages from, I love politics. And so if you're into it, read as much as possible, knowing that nothing is probably right on the bullseye.
But
Well,
what about like a civics class? Do I need a civics class? Like this is how a bill becomes law, like the Schoolhouse Rock thing.
But part of the problem is there's the one layer to add to what Sean said and what I said is politics, right? Yeah. So you can have conversations with policy people in a room, but one thing you want to be aware of is what do the people think? And how is it being perceived out there? Because that disconnect is one of the biggest challenges on Capitol Hill and in governing. You're in the Beltway, you're in the weeds, you're sitting around these rooms, and what is the media saying? What is talk radio or podcasters now? And all these different things, because sometimes it's the inside game, but sometimes it's the outside. And like, it is a holistic, like it's all important, right? There's not one source.
Well, so let me give you a great example. So on Schoolhouse Rock, a bill becomes a law, a House, a Senate propose it, it goes to conference, the president signs it or doesn't sign it, pocket vetoes it, whatever. In reality, there's 13 appropriations bill. None of them pass. They jam them into an omnibus. The speaker schedules a vote for a Friday afternoon, knowing that members need to get out of town and go home for the weekend. He jams them on the bill, tells them that he's going to give them a fundraiser if they vote for it, or he's going to pull out their project if they don't. Then they send it to conference. The conferees don't. I mean, like, the reality of how it really does work, the inside baseball of what it takes to get a vote over the line, the minority votes against it. I mean, look at the National Defense Authorization Bill, the NDAA that's happening right now. Speaker Johnson's probably going to put it on the suspension calendar, which requires 66 votes. Democrats don't like some of the trans language that's in it. So what's the sweetener to get it over the top? I mean, how it should work, it should go through regular order and come to the floor. How it's going to work, he's going to put it on the suspension calendar that's going to need Democrats to vote because he can't get to 218 with his own members because a couple of them are holdouts. So how it really will work versus how the book says it works or your professor tells you at college. I mean, I remember taking a bunch of government classes. I was a government major, and then I came to Washington and sat down and, went to my first job and realized, like, members of Congress walk to the floor, the whip hands them a thing and says, here's the whip card to vote yes. And they go, yes, sir, got it. I mean, or, there's a fundraiser that night and they say, hey, if you could help us with this one thing. I mean, the reality of how the process works and how it's supposed to work are very different.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate
Barry, your question's great. It's a hard one to answer as the struggles of my two colleagues to refine something for you demonstrated. Let us give it some thought, and maybe in the coming week or maybe in the new year, we'll give you like we'll give a five title recommendation. Books are hard because Washington has changed so much in the age of Trump.
exactly. Yeah,
So
thanks.
books are a little outdated, but let us think more about it. And thank you for the question, and thanks for being part of Two-Way.
Sure.
John, I
Okay,
like
thank
your
you.
policy passion, man. That was good.
Yeah. All right. Laura Curran hasn't been here with us in a while, and always interesting on Long Island, New York City, or New York State, rather. Laura, welcome in. What's on your mind?
Hi, thank you for calling on me, Mark. Hi, guys. So,
Hello.
as a Democrat, I'm looking at this from a lot of this from the outside of the Republican Party. And it seems like there's a lot of bullying going on of elected officials to be with MAGA, even if that's not where their heart is. And when one is bullied, one becomes resentful. So, two things could happen: either they rebel or they just suck it up and become more resentful and miserable. And I'm not saying all Republican elected officials are miserable, but I know some are, having to go along with things they don't agree with. I mean, they're elected on their own, but yet they have to knuckle under. And so, is there a scenario, guys, and this is a question really for anybody, where something goes terribly wrong in the next 4 years, whether it's Trump's fault or not, circumstances, the economy tanks, we get tangled up in some war, something bad happens, as inevitably does. Will the, as I see them, these sort of peevish, resentful elected officials finally assert themselves and say, no, enough? Or will they just continue to knuckle under? Or, because it's not, the strategies of the MAGA people are obviously very smart. Look what's happened with Pete Hegseth turnaround. But it's not just those elite type folks. It's also the people out there, the Charlie Kirks and all of those folks who are, got the trolls and the bots and all of this stuff, guns trained on people who don't behave. So just play this out. If things go really bad, what do you think would happen to Trump and MAGA?
Great question. Sean.
I think the base is where the base is. They believe in Donald Trump. You've seen things go bad. I mean, we've had issues, COVID, for example, and the base sticks with Trump. So I don't think there's going to be an issue with that. And I would take exception to your point, Laura, in the sense that Donald Trump might be much more and historically overt in his tactics and some of the MAGA folks. I agree with you on that. But when you go back and realize how Nancy Pelosi ran the House, she ran that place with an iron fist. You would not cross Nancy Pelosi. Maybe it was a little bit more covert and behind the scenes, but she made it very clear, you cross me and you're done. And she knew how to take revenge out on people in a way that.
Well, and it's not just Nancy Pelosi, Laura. As you know, you had 3 years of failed policy on immigration. You had
Yeah.
3 years of failure to deal with inflation.
And his aide.
Well, I'll get to that. And you had failed Afghanistan withdrawal. And then you had the logical conclusion, well, maybe our very old, infirm president should get a primary challenge. Well, why didn't he, except from Dean Phillips? Because bullies who worked for Joe Biden called people who got out of line and said, get back in line or you'll have a price to pay. So I say with respect, sure, there are bullies in MAGA, but there are plenty of bullies in the Democratic Party, and they arguably cost the Democrats the White House.
Yes, I would agree with that.
By bullying people into silence, they allowed Joe Biden to keep the nomination up until it was too late, in the view of the vice president's people, belatedly,
I
to
agree.
replace him and win. So I think Sean's right that they'll stay loyal to Donald Trump, but I also don't think one party has a monopoly on bullying. Dan.
Well, I think they'll stay loyal to him until they don't. And the history of politics, whether it was LBJ, Tom DeLay, Nancy Pelosi, you don't get to the top by having a very loose ship. You get to the top by instilling fear in your opponents, right? I mean, it's the old Godfather adage, if they fear you, they'll respect you. And so Trump has power today, probably maximum. This is about, he's in a honeymoon right now. To your point, he's going to own everything here starting in about 50 days. And, that's why historically a president gets the most done in their first 18 months, because then they start to lose power. And the only president who has really left office in my lifetime. I mean, really, FDR was the only one who ran it as long as he did. I mean, Reagan, the party was starting to fray, even though George W. Bush, H.W. Bush got elected. Clinton had problems. Can Donald Trump maintain this unity and energy for 12 years is a great question. It would be unprecedented. And he might do it. He might be the one who could do it. But the odds, the political laws of gravity are that he cannot. And all of these people will flee him if they think it is in their interest to get reelected. And all the people who want to run in 2028 will differentiate themselves if they think it's a winning formula.
Yeah, the thing
Laura,
that I think that this is true. This is unique and different, right?
Yep.
The movement that he leads is truly a grassroots movement like no other. He's not just powerful because he has the tools and the instruments to exact revenge or the money to say, hey, I'll finance a primary. It's the movement. There's a reason that Charlie Kirk can tweet at Mike Rounds, the senator from South Dakota, and everyone cares and talks about it because there's a people behind that. And if you look at the last 10 years and the number of times people have said, okay, that's it, Donald Trump, they're going to walk away from him for this reason or that reason. It's never happened. So maybe in 5 years or whatever, but until there's until there's another person on the block, meaning in 2028, when there's actually a nominee, I don't see it happening. So for at least the next 4 years, I don't think there's even a possibility that Donald Trump doesn't have the movement behind him.
The only
Laura,
thing is that movement
Go
has got both the business community and the working class community, and it is very hard to hold those two together and make both sides happy. And Nancy Pelosi has said it. Power isn't given, it's taken. So to Sean's point, you want to take out the king? Better not miss.
Laura, not things that have been messed up on the Trump side, like Hegseth or Matt Gaetz. What have you seen since Election Day on your side that's encouraging to you about the party understanding how to come back, if anything?
A lot of conversations I'm having with other Democrats is very much a reckoning, and what we didn't work. A lot of what you said, Mark, about the party bullying their own, and that's why we're in this mess we're in, is understood by a lot of people, and that really does resonate. And I think anyone who's been in politics has been bullied to one extent or another by their party. That's just kind of how it is. But I mean, I think with what we see with how Joe Biden was treated, and I said very early that this was not good, that we can't go with this guy. But I forgot. I had a brilliant point, but I forgot what it was.
Laura, do you have a favorite for party chair?
I like Rom. I'm all
Yeah,
about the rom-com.
Yeah, if he doesn't run, is there somebody else you like?
None of the other ones really excites me.
Yeah.
Laura, is there anyone in the party that inspires you right now?
You know what? There's this guy in Maine, a congressman, Golden. I like him a lot.
Jared
I've
Golden,
come
yeah.
around. Yeah, he's just someone who is real, who can talk to people, who's not all talking pointy. We really got to get away from that crap because it just seems, I know it seems elitist, but it just seems so phony. And I think when people can really see who the true core of someone is, that's when you start to build trust. That's when you start to build respect. And I think so many politicians are just so market tested and phony and so far from their true selves. People can sniff that out.
Yeah.
Part of Trump's strength.
Yes,
Laura,
I agree.
Laura, thanks for coming. Please come back regularly. We always
you.
love having you on. Thank you. All right, Dr. John, different Dr. John. Doctor, welcome in. Thank you for joining. You're in California, I see. Tell folks what's on your mind.
Thank you for having this show, Mark, and good morning. I'd love to meet your producers. I love to meet your producers and directors sometime. But
Yeah.
I do have a recommendation. When you have a guest, put like Senator this from Wyoming, like they do in the news, because sometimes I lose the expertise of the person who's talking. I started following you after you made the prediction about mental health problems after the election, and because there were in 2016, there were probably 500 excess suicides in 3 months following the election. And I had some patients this time who, had that problem, one Democrat, one Republican. And I started thinking, as you probably know, there's a strong genetic component to your political ideology, about 40 to 60% of the variance. There's anatomical differences in the brains between liberals and conservatives. There's electrophysiological differences. Conservatives like the words order, They like the words tradition, like the words law. Liberals like the word caring, progress, and change. And there's also an equal number, it seems to me, you guys would know better, of liberals and conservatives in most societies. Well, given the genetic determinant and that fact, that's the hand of God or Charles Darwin, whoever you want. And it seems to me that, for example, take Civil War. Who was it that was ended slavery? It was liberals. Who got women to vote? It was liberals. But in what, 1920, the 19th Amendment was passed because, yeah, war would be better if there was no alcohol. And the conservatives came back and the 21st Amendment said that causes too much disorder. So what I ask my patients is, what good does liberal do if you're conservative, and what good does a conservative do? And that seems to when people think about that, there's a little more empathy, and if there's a sort of a greater plan.
All super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Did you have a question, or can we ask you questions?
Yeah, I had a question about, and this is just a sort of a basic political question. Like, say the Hispanic vote, empathy gets a lot of votes. Bill Clinton showed that, right? And
Yeah.
take 1848, the Mexican-American War. Americans and Mexicans are taught something very different about that. I mean, if I steal your car, it's still your car the next day, right? Well, if I steal your car, is it still your car in 180 years? Because, Lincoln lost his seat over it. We just invaded Mexico. And there's a national holiday in Mexico about 4 teenage boys who fought to the death instead of surrendering Mexico City to the gringos. It's a national holiday. If a politician just said that, just communicated to the Hispanic community, we understand that, does that help get votes?
Great question. Dan.
Well, look, I don't want to prescribe why people vote the way they do, except to say that research has shown that Trump's message to Latinos on both kind of law and order and safety in their neighborhoods, on the economy, and on immigration was appealing. And so I think sometimes people want their commander-in-chief to be empathetic, and sometimes they want the commander-in-chief to crack heads and get stuff done.
Right.
And, the country's mood evolves. It changes. Today, and in the last 8-9 years, we have largely been a country that is disgruntled with our leadership, unhappy with the way things are, and we want somebody who is different and who we think can get stuff done to make our lives better. Latinos, whites, blacks, you name it. And Donald Trump has appealed to people successfully that he can do that.
Yeah. So
He still gives the impression that he doesn't really like Hispanics.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Who gives that impression?
It's Trump.
I think
I'm going to deport everybody.
I think all three of us are disagreeing. Well, first of all, not everyone he's going to deport is Hispanic, and he's not deporting them because they're Hispanic. He's deporting people because they broke the law, and many Hispanics Americans support his policies. So yes. I don't think there's any basis on which you can say in a fact-based way that Donald Trump doesn't like Hispanics, or that there's reasons
Mark,
to think he doesn't.
No, they perceive that he doesn't because he wants to deport them.
I don't think so.
Friends I have.
Not true.
No.
Simply not true.
No. There's just no basis for saying that. No
basis. So can I make 2 quick points? I've said this over and over again, so I won't repeat this, but people vote, generally speaking, on 2 main things: personal security, economically, and safety, right? Do I feel safe? Do I feel like the country's moving in the right direction? If they are, they vote for the incumbent. If they don't, they vote for the challenger. It's a very basic premise. That there's obviously some nuance to that. The second thing is, if you look at the gains that Donald Trump made in the Hispanic community, that is just, it's not borne out by the data. Number 2, when you poll Hispanics that are here legally, that are citizens, they don't want people who jumped the line, who broke the law, to get a benefit that they didn't get. Most of them feel like, I obeyed the law, I followed it. Why is somebody else getting something that I didn't get, right? So there's a sense of law and order. There's large, and also, just as a premise, the Hispanic community is not monolithic. You've got
Totally.
specific parochial issues within the Cuban community and the I-4 corridor, the Puerto Rican community in the I-4 corridor in Florida, the Cuban community down in South Florida, in Colorado, it's a lot more South American and Mexican. I mean, so each community has different issues, especially when it comes to immigration. But by and large, I actually think you've seen greater support for Donald Trump, especially in the law and order phase.
Do you think you can turn some of those immigrants into Republicans?
They are.
He's doing it.
No,
He's
the illegal immigrants.
Well,
I don't
it's
want,
so hard
I mean,
to know.
to be blunt, I don't want people who are like, I want them to follow the law. I want them to come here legally, and then I want them to become Republicans.
Well, I'm thinking of the 230 census.
But John, if you
what is the
look at
census?
his performance, had Trump won in 20, he made significant strides between 16 and 20, and then he made even more strides between 20 and 24 with Latinos. The trend lines are clear as day that Latinos are migrating towards the Republican Party and Donald Trump for reasons that Sean has explained, whether they're legal or illegal. Like I think he has found something very successfully to appeal to them, and the Democratic Party has got to stop saying, you're voting against your self-interest, he hates you, and you ought to be with us. I think that's one of the reasons we're losing them, and they won't even listen to anything we say because they just shut down the moment they hear that, roll their eyes, and that's our problem.
John, what do you like most about Donald Trump as president?
I like his decisiveness. Somebody was talking about, does he make idle threats early? I don't think he makes idle threats. If somebody really, if a Republican really opposes him, I think he will go after him.
What words?
I do not like his use of the English language. At least this election, he didn't say things like very, 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 very stupendous. That used to drive me crazy. But I do like certain aspects of him. I'm not proud of him as a president. He's not a Kennedy. He's not a Reagan. So,
John, who's the best president of your lifetime?
Abraham Lincoln.
Well, not of your lifetime.
Oh yeah, he told me a lot of things.
If you could make, yeah, go ahead.
Kennedy.
Probably
Although
Kennedy.
I admired Clinton's ability to compromise.
Yeah. If you could make anyone who is constitutionally eligible to be president, who would you make president?
Elon Musk.
He's not eligible.
He was born in South Africa.
Yeah.
I don't know. His clone, I guess. I have a lot of admiration for him.
Yeah. Is that Lincoln above you on the wall, or is it free floating?
It is.
It's on the wall. It's a great picture. John, thank you for joining. We hope you'll come back.
Thank you for having me.
Really, really glad to have you part of us community here. All right. Sean.
Yes.
A little surprise feature I like to play. What are you looking for today?
God, that's a good, I wish you would give me a heads up on this because.
All right, let's go to Dan. Dan doesn't need heads up. Dan, what are you looking for today?
Just to see if any of the senators that have been very, very quiet speak up.
About Hegseth, you mean?
Any of them. I think one more is going to get sacrificed to the gods.
Yeah. Sean, time's up. What are you looking for?
I don't know. I'm looking for change in my couch. I don't know. I'll find something for tomorrow.
Can you tilt and show us the tree?
Which one? I'll show you
Whatever one you want to show
Hold on.
us.
I got to do the better one because this is.
Man, this makes me motion sick.
I'm sorry. I got to
Close your eyes.
See?
All right, that's classic.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, not rainbow, but it's more classic. Looks great.
Yeah, I do it
All
all
right.
myself. Like,
All right.
Dan,
Well,
Dan
we
knows
should
there was
talk
no
about that.
rapping involved.
We should talk about that. Dan came clean, but not necessarily voluntarily. When he said the other day on this program that they had wrapped all the president's house. If you don't follow Dan on Twitter, Dan, what were you compelled to tweet by some outside pressure?
Yes, all politics is local, including mine. And I was informed by my wife, who was watching the show, that we did not wrap Christmas presents all Sunday. She wrapped the Christmas presents while I sat and watched the Giants lose to the Saints. So,
But to be fair, you're such a poor rapper that it would be a mistake for any family to entrust in you a roll of tape and a scissors.
If my wife is like and I love you, I know you're watching, neat corners, tight, like properly cut, taped. I am much bigger, like just snip. fold it. It can look ugly.
Now
The whole
let
point-
me ask you a question. If you really concentrated and took your time, are you physically able to wrap a present as well as your wife, or you're literally not able to?
Yes, I am capable of it. I just don't see the value in
Okay.
it.
All right.
We got
I'm not
bipartisan
capable.
agreement on this.
I'm,
Why
I'm not
bother?
capable. I'm not capable of doing it. I don't have the capacity to wrap cleanly. So you guys are lazy. I'm incompetent. Thank you for watching. I will be back at 6 o'clock tonight with an episode of a little program we call Two-Way Tonight. The name might seem overly on the nose to you, but that's what we call it. Maybe someday we'll call it Fred or something else. And then tomorrow, about 11 hours from now, this exact assemblage will reconvene, and we hope you'll be part of it. Thanks
23
everybody.
hours from now. 23.
23. What did I say?
11.
11. Sorry. 23. We'll reconvene. And thanks for everybody who asked questions today. And for those who had their hands up, please come back tomorrow. And in like 2 minutes, I'll be on with Michael Smerconish. So see you then and there. Have a good day.